Good morning and welcome to another edition of Money Truth Moments with our very own Judy Copenbarger. Good morning, Judy. How you doing?
Good morning, Carlos. I'm well. Happy Tuesday to you.
Happy Tuesday to you too. It feels a little weird, right? We had yesterday as a holiday, and now we're just jumping right into this. This is great, though.
Yeah, our week's already going.
Exactly, right? So, folks, thank you for joining us. If you're not following Judy, please do so at judycopenbarger.com. This past few weeks, we've been talking about married couples and money, and it's been a very interesting topic, right? We've covered a lot of ground on a lot of different areas of money and couples. Please make sure that you watch a lot of our replays because you're going to find a lot of information that's related to your current situation, married or probably going into marriage, that I think will be very useful for you in the future as well. Today, we have a very jam-packed show, and it's a very strong one because we're talking about, can a strong marriage weather one spouse controlling all of the money? And you know that there's a lot of controversy with that. So I don't want to waste any more time. What do you say we get started, Judy?
Let's do it. I'm ready.
All right. So again, I'm going to post a question. Can a strong marriage weather one spouse controlling all of the money?
No. End of show.
Okay. Short answer, no.
Yeah, absolutely they can. And it just really depends on the couple, the individual skills and things like that. It's interesting. There's kind of a split from my experience over the last 40 years and working with lots of couples and this issue. Right around age 50-ish, it seems like older than that, most couples have one or the other of the spouses doing most or all of the money management. And then under 50, I see a lot of couples pretty much splitting it and even having his, hers, and theirs money. But there seems to be more of a shared role around money management in these younger couples. It's really kind of an interesting thing.
Yeah, and I think what we're finding also is that sometimes it's good, sometimes it's bad, depending how you're going into it, right? If you're going into it with an open mind, I think that helps the situation a lot more. If not, it's like what you said. You're so kind of used to being on your own for so long that it's always like, this is mine, that's yours. Let's just kind of keep that. But we kind of forget, nope, you're kind of like a joint team now. So you got to look at it from a different perspective, right? I'm sure you have a lot of scenarios and a lot of stories that you can share with us. You mind diving a little bit deeper into that?
Sure. Yeah, you mentioned kind of, I've been on my own for a while. So the ones that are under 50, there seems to be a few factors that factor into why there's a better sharing. They waited longer to get married. Everybody used to get married at, 18, 20, earlier than they do now, if you look at the statistics. So they're on their own longer. Another thing is they've had maybe more education. They've had not only hard knocks, but maybe they've gone to school, they've worked in business, they've talked to their peers about what they're doing about money and figuring out, what elections to take at work on their payroll deductions, 401ks and things. And they figured out how to pay the bills because they either failed and learned from that, or they've got it together. So there are several reasons that these not younger people, but millennials and younger people, they're much more savvy about money. They have access to information that in the old days we would have to read a book or go to a class or sit down with grandpa to learn these things. Right. And there's so much now just at our fingertips, on our cell phones and on our iPads that we can just go and learn about, what is that 403B and what is a mutual fund and what does it mean to earn interest or to have deferred giving? What do all these things mean? And so at our fingertips now we can be educated. Now, it doesn't mean everything on the internet is true or healthy information. There's a lot of really bad stuff, but there's a lot of knowledge available. And that wasn't available a generation or two ago. And so I think for that reason, you've got couples that have all that knowledge, all that skill, all that experience. They're maybe, coming together a little bit later in life and they have some experience under their belt. And so it's easy to say, well, I do it this way. Well, I do it this way. And then they share the roles. Now, it's a little bit different for the older couples that didn't have all these things. They were married early. Maybe they didn't have quite the education early on. They didn't have a lot of life experience when they got married, and they just divided the roles. Maybe dad went and earned the money and mom managed the household and paid the bills, kind of handled the pocketbook. Maybe mom did everything, maybe dad did everything. And mom's role was to raise the kids and do all the household things or whatever, or do her own job. So it seems to be that way. Now, good, bad, and ugly of that is interesting. A couple of couples come to mind actually right now. They're both later years. They're in that over 50 crowd, well over their 50s. And I've got one couple that he handled the checkbook the whole time. They're actually in Texas. His health is failing. They're much older. His health is failing, and he's done everything about money forever. She's never even known the expenses. She would do the shopping and just kind of, that was her part. And he handled all the bills, all the accounts, all the investments, contribution, earning, all of that. And now that he's failing, she's going to be in a tough spot because she doesn't know. So when this can be a bad thing is when there's a transition in life, a disability or a death. It's like, what do I do now? I don't know where the passwords are. I don't even know how much to spend on gas or food a month. So I think that can be kind of the downside of one person doing it all and one person not being in the know. So that's the Texas couple. And then I have a couple up in Central California. He passed away recently. Now, he never touched the money. She ran her own business from an early age. They both earned really well, and he was a veteran and had pension and all that stuff. So they both contributed to the earnings, but she handled every penny from day one, the whole time. Now, fortunately, she outlived him. So we didn't have the issue of, oh, what do I do now? I don't even know, where the bank is, right? So it's interesting. It could be one gender or the other that handles the money. And for those couples, it worked. Having one exclusively manage the money, it worked. It's interesting. You asked me, if one person, can a marriage survive if one person controls all the money? Well, there's a difference between control and manage. Controlling the money leaves room for disharmony in the marriage. I control it. It's a power thing. It's mine. It's not yours. But managing money is just, we're just using the money to do our combined goals in life. So that's one distinction I think is helpful to keep in mind. If you're going to be in a marriage to be or a marriage that's already there, and you're going to have conversations about money, you want to use words like managing it together. Or we're commingling, we're working together rather than control. Who gets to control anything? That just puts you on the wrong path, in my opinion.
Yeah, and it's great team effort too when you look at it in that perspective. Folks, thank you for joining us this morning. We are discussing, controlling, spouse controlling all of the money. We've been talking about marriage and money. Thank you for joining us this morning. If you're not following Judy, do so at judycopenbarger.com. We're going to talk about also resources. So we're not just giving you topics. We're going to also give you some solutions as well a little bit later on in the show. Something also that I want to touch on that we've touched on different episodes before, and I think it's important now to bring it up too, is when you have both spouses and God forbid something happens to both of them, talk about the importance and the difference between wills and trust to have your family set.
Oh, sure. Yeah, well, a will is you writing down either formally or informally in your own handwriting. You could do the holographic will where you just write it down on a napkin, right? So there's one or the other two types of wills. What people sometimes are not aware of is a will is nothing but a piece of paper until it goes into probate. And probate is the judicial or the legal process that says what's going to happen with your stuff. Who gets it? How do they get it? Who owes you? Who do you owe? And it settles all the affairs, the financial affairs of the person who's passed away. So the court oversees that process unless you have a way to go around the court. So if you have a will, or even if you don't have a will, the state has a will for you. That's going to go through court. And what some people don't like about going to court, going through the probate process, is the delays. It could be 2 years, 3 years, 4, 5 years, maybe more. And the costs are very high if you compare it to not having those costs. It's a lot of money. So you can figure on average about 5% of the fair market value of the estate. So if you own a house, 5% of the house, that's a lot. And then you have 401ks, you have life insurances, all these other monies. You add all that stuff together, that's a lot. And then there's filing fees and other court fees. So that's the probate process. If you have a will, that's what you're doing. Now, if you have a trust, it's one way that you can avoid the probate process. So a trust, it lives beyond the life of a person, a natural person. And so you can transfer your wealth and your assets to other people or other causes that you care about without using the court to supervise that process. And so that would be a trust administration. So many people that have small children, uh, anyone under 18, or someone they're taking care of, like conservatorship, someone they're taking care of over 18 that they're responsible for, or if they own property or have substantial wealth, maybe that they've inherited or earned over the years, they think, 5%, that's a lot. I'd rather not pay that. I'd rather just create a trust and avoid that. But also, families that have young children don't want the court deciding what's going to happen with the children.
Right.
Who's going to take care of them? What kind of assets are available for them? Having a special master or some accountant somewhere oversee the money and say, well, no, you can't go to camp this summer. I don't think that's a good idea. So most people want to have their own guardians chosen. Maybe my sister, my brother, my parents, whoever, take care of my children. I don't want the court picking. I want to pick. And so a trust allows you to do some of those things. You have a lot more say in how it's going to go when you're not here to say what you would choose.
And Judy, and I want to make sure we drive this message home. How important, from what you've seen in your career, is having both of these items in place?
Well, I have meetings with lots of families when there's an incapacity. I've got one coming up right after this show here. And there are two kinds of meetings you can have. One is when there has not been proper planning, and you sit around the whole table with all the family members there who are grieving. Sometimes they're not getting along. Maybe they haven't gotten along or seen each other for many years. And they're all in the same room to find out, what are we going to do now? What do we have to do? What do we get? What does the government get? What process are we going to go through? And that is a tough meeting when there has not been proper planning. It's a tough meeting. You have to talk about the fees, the costs, the processes. There's so much room to take a family and tear them apart when you go through that process. It's so painful and regrets. You're kind of mad at the person who died because they didn't set it up right.
Mm-hmm.
Then there are the other meetings I have with people, same family situation around that conference table, where we're able to say, they had the planning, they had the powers of attorney, they had the trust, they had all of the peripheral documents they needed for a seamless transition. And the process is quicker, it's easier, it's much more eco-friendly. It costs a whole lot less. There's so much more room for harmony. Everything is documented in writing because we took the time with the clients to go through every possible contingency, and it's clear. So even though the family's grieving and maybe they're not super happy with the slice of pie they get, right? It's all in writing, and it's what mom or dad or grandma or grandpa wanted. So it takes a lot of contention out of the room and out of the conversation, and it leaves a lot more space for family harmony. And our role is always not only to go through the process and make sure all the documents are done and the recordings and reportings are done and all that, but to make sure that the family, the relationships are in a better place when we're through the process than when we started. That's our role that we've assigned ourselves. And that's part of the ministry of our business, is making sure families get along better going through this process. And we help them through the grieving process and through all the technical things that need to happen upon someone's passing.
Thank you. And I think it's also a good opportunity, folks. If you're just joining us, please make sure you visit judycopenbarger.com. There is a wealth of resources, and I kind of want to jump into that now because we're talking about some options, things that we're talking about strong marriages. If one spouse is controlling all of the money, when you go to judycopenbarger.com, I'm going to let Judy talk a little bit more about what are some of those resources that folks can find, not only related to this topic, but for other things that come up, such as wills and trust.
Oh, yeah. So if you want to learn more about wills and trust, you can go to judycopenbarger.com. There's a little green button there you can click, and it takes you right to a whole course. It's the Money, Truth, and Life online mastery program. And in that course, we cover all 5 pillars of finance, and one of them is legal legacy. So legal legacy covers the difference between a will and a trust and what kind of trust. There are so many, What kind of powers of attorney are there? When would I need them? Do I need them at all? It goes through the different kinds of business entities you might have, legal entities, and all the other legal things you need to know as a small business owner, as a ministry leader, and as a part of a family, just trying to do your life and mitigate the taxes and fees throughout your life and optimize all of the things that you have, all of the wealth that you're growing. There's also several classes, a whole course on insurances, on taxation. That's a big one. That's an important one. There's so many kinds of taxes. Most of you've never heard of. But what kind of taxes might I pay and how do I get out of that? Unless you like to pay more taxes. Most people don't. And then there's a whole series on cash flows, cash reserves, all the investments, the growth accounts that you could have. There's qualified and non-qualified. So 401, 403, all kinds of pensions, all the options you have at work. Should I be investing, at home on my Ameritrade account in mutual funds or stocks or bonds? Should I hire an investment manager or can I do it on my own online? What are the pros and cons to those kinds of things? So all of this is covered in that course. And you can go click in there and just take one class if you want, or 2 or 3, or take the whole series on any of the 5 pillars. But all that is there for you. You can go on for free. You don't have to subscribe if you don't want to. I believe right now it's set up for 7 days. Watch all the classes you want. And if you want to do a deep dive on estate planning, this is the best way to get the truth about estate planning, wills and trusts, and what should you do and pros and cons to each. It's going to give you everything you need so you can make a really good decision for your family.
That's awesome. And folks, remember, the key word here not only is the knowledge, but it's also free. So make sure you take advantage of this as well, too. You're not going to get many opportunities like that. And also the fact that you're getting all of this information from a real professional here, Judy Copenbarger. So I want to thank you for putting that out there, too, because it really does help a lot of folks that are really struggling with questions, they don't have answers to. So folks, thank you again for joining us. We are talking about married couples and money, but more importantly, today's topic is, can a strong marriage weather one spouse controlling all of the money? Judy's gotten to some really key points and share some stories. Please make sure that if you're just joining us, watch the beginning of the show. So Judy, I have another question for you. So we talked about folks that are around 50, a little bit under 50 as well. So let's say, hey, I'm looking to get married. What are some best practices that I should be having with my future spouse when it comes to talking about finances, or kind of setting this up so we don't have this, who controls what, and this mine, or yours, whatever. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
What wisdom would you give somebody starting out or thinking about jumping into marriage as well, too?
Oh, that's such a great question. Great question, Carlos. I think the first thing is have open conversations, have dialogue about it. Chances are, if you're getting married these days, you've got more experience under your belt. Maybe you've gone through college. Maybe you've had your own apartment, your own place for a while, or maybe it's later in life already for you. So I think the first thing after this conversation is just to assess the skill sets that you have. Maybe one of you is really good at talking to people. You have that, what do they call that? Emotional intelligence, where you're very relational. Your way of being is very connecting. And you're going to be the good one to be on the phone to talk to the utilities people or deal with the bankers or the mortgage broker. You're trying to buy a home and there's all that stuff. And the other one, it just like sucks the life out of you to deal with these people. One of you may have better skills around that, right? And so maybe that's the one that manages setting up accounts and dealing with the ongoing processes. And maybe the other one is more, I think that's right brain, the numbers. Adding up the numbers and, working with the budget, their spending plan, making sure everything adds up and how much do we need to put into our retirement plans to get there? How much should we save for these goals to get there? One of you probably has better skills on one side and the other one has better skills on the other side. So just assess those. And you can tell, because if you've been living on your own for a while, you'll know there are some things you hate to do. It's on your list and it stays on your list because you just really don't want to deal with it. Find out what those things are. Maybe you're capable, but it is not making your life better to have to do it. And maybe you can pass that to the other spouse and then share the roles. As long as it's clear, as long as both of you think the other one's doing it and nobody's doing it and you drop the ball, that's a problem. Oh, I guess the mortgage didn't get paid. Oops, that you were going to get paid, right? So working that out, dealing with the questions of should we share all of our money, or should we have some money that's kept separate? And it works really well for a lot of couples to each have their own account that there's no accountability around. But they both, when they earn their money, they put money into a joint account that has all the expenses that are shared come out of it. That works really well for a lot of people. But you got to have the conversation and plan out how it's going to go. Doesn't mean it can't change, because a spending plan and all this work is a moving, breathing process. It's a template, right? So you can always adjust it when it's not working. But who's going to keep, the records? How are you going to keep them? Are they on somebody's computer? Are they in a file cabinet? How are we going to do that? So when it's tax time, somebody, and who is that, can pull all that stuff out to get to the accountant. So it takes a lot of stress out of that time of year, tax time of year, when you have a good system and then you just use it. It's like you set up all the files and then you just do it. So that's my recommendation for a couple getting ready to join forces.
Awesome. I think another piece to this that I've seen, and it applies not only to married couples, but I think a lot of us have this where, sometimes we don't know everything and we're afraid of people knowing that we don't know everything. And that's, I think, where a lot of conflict happens. And I think what you're suggesting also, this great form of communication can alleviate a lot of these issues too, as well. So folks, again, thank you for joining us this morning. We are talking with Judy Copenbarger here on Money Truth Moments. We've been discussing whether if a strong marriage can weather if one spouse controls all of the money. Going back to what you said also, I think it's also important to maybe just touch a little bit more on, the misconception of controlling versus the management, right? We talked about it, and obviously the older we are, the more mature we get. Well, we think we're more mature, right? But in some cases, it doesn't really work out that way. But for those starting out, I think it's also a key point to kind of bring back, just to wrap this up, about the difference between what is controlling versus what is management.
Control. I control you. I control your money, right? It's just not a good word in marriage. I think it's just, most of the time it's not helpful. Now, being in control, maybe, but can you also say we're managing well? Right. To me, it sounds a lot more helpful and connecting in a relationship to be managing something, not controlling something. So I think that's probably, it's just a semantics thing for me, but control it kind of rubs me the wrong way. And chances are, if it rubs me the wrong way, there might be one out of every two in a marriage that like that word, and they don't like the idea of controlling anything, controlling the house, controlling the garage, controlling the cars, controlling the money, anything. It's just room, it leaves room for power trip. But managing, you can do it well. So, once you assess who's got what role and you're in your role and it's clear, clarity is a big deal. Having goals is a big deal. And separating those roles and being forward moving in a clear way is going to be brilliant for you. So I would rather see you manage together than have one person control everything. I think it'll work out better.
No, and that's great advice, folks. Again, if you're not following Judy, please do so. I'm telling you, there is a lot of great resources on her website at judycopenbarger.com. And the best part of it is, folks, it's free. So take advantage of it. You don't get opportunities like that too often. So with that said, I think it's time for our favorite part of the show. The Money Truth Challenge. All right.
Challenge. I got a challenge.
What do you got for us?
Okay. So if you're in a couple or planning to be in a couple, the first thing is to take pen and paper. Get your pen and paper. It can't be, in your little notepad on your computer. There's something valuable about from your head to your eyes, down your arm, hand to the paper that makes it happen. It's just something magical about that. So the first thing in the challenge, you're going to have 3 things to do. The first thing, write down on your pad of paper or on your napkin or whatever you're writing on, write down what is working really well with the role allocation that we have, with the split that we have. I do it all, you do it all. I do some things, you do some things. I have my bank account, yours, whatever it is. What's working really well? It's like, yeah, we figured that out. We're on our way. And there might be several things. So just write down anything that's working really good around money management in your marriage. Number two, you guessed it, write down what's not working so well. What could we do more? What could we do better? What could we do different when it comes to the roles around money and who's managing the roles there? And then the third thing is, what is our next step? What is our action plan moving forward? What do we need to do or undo? What do we need to add to make sure everybody has peace and serenity when it comes to money and money conversations? And it's not a stressful thing every time, oh, we got to talk about money again, the bills, all the stack of papers on the dining room table. We got to deal with that, get ready for the tax guy, whatever. So that is your challenge. What's working really well? What's not working so well? And what are we going to do about it? There you go.
Awesome. And that's a great challenge, folks. As always, please let us know how you guys are doing with the challenges. Reach out to us, put it on the chat. We've been more than happy to answer some additional questions later on in some other shows as well, too. So I want to thank you guys for joining us. We've been on this journey about married couples and money. We've talked a lot about different areas of money when it comes to couples, everything from money relief to power issues with money. Today's topic was, weathering the storm, basically if somebody controls it or not, and how we're dividing that as well too. And I look forward to next week when we can continue on our series with all of that as well too. So Judy, any last parting wisdom words that you have for us regarding today?
Yeah, take action. This is a good week. It's a short week, but it's a good week to take action and actually do your challenge and actually move forward in the area of finance in your life. It'll serve you well.
Awesome. Okay, folks, you've heard the challenge. You've joined us. Thank you very much for today. We are here every Tuesday morning at Money Truth Moments. And once again, Judy, thank you for your wisdom. I will see you next week.
My pleasure.